and justice for all.
The next order of business is public comment. I do not have any public comment that was submitted for the Finance Committee meeting. So with that, we will turn it over to the financial management summary. And if you wouldn't mind, Mrs. Holmes, if you could just hit some key points. No need to take us through the entire thing, just anything that you think you'd like to call our attention to.
Okay, that sounds good. Good evening. You have received a copy of my financial management summary as well as the report. And first and foremost, we do have some information as regards to the ESSER 2 grant.
Terrific.
Finally came in Friday. Just as I was typing this up the day before, lo and behold, here's the information. The first launch was incorrect. And they had to do a second launch. Oh, by the way, we figured it wrong. This is the amount you're going to get. Okay. So if you wait a little bit, you get more money. That's always a good thing. So Seymour is scheduled to get $1,019,026 from the ESSER 2 grant. They also shared with us a document similar to the document that was shared with last time when the coronavirus relief funds came out. And this one speaks more in the direction of remote learning. So one of the things they targeted is distant learning teachers, for one. If there's a shortage with teachers and you can't get teachers to man classrooms or whatever, that's also able to be in there. There are implications in there that you can, some of us do have health aides. So if we want to continue the rest of the year with them, I feel that we can now because that funding is there.
Mm-hmm.
So the two main things I want to point out is that we now have funding for the rest of the year for the distant learning teachers and for the health aides to keep them right up to the end of the year.
That's
okay.
Great.
Now this grant is going to be a time period of 2023. We got up until that time to spend that money.
Wow.
So it's quite a while, which is a good thing because as we progress in this whole, lack of a better word, nightmare, trying to do the best we can with what we have been given to us as far as funding goes and trying to get everybody back into full person in-person learning and so forth. We're going to need to have this funding to continue to make our buildings safe for the students and staff. So I think that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically it for now. I'm sure there'll be updates as we go along of more things that we can use that money for. But I thought that was the most important that I could tell you tonight.
It sure is. That's
would
great.
be we got the funding. We're $1,019,026. We have to apply for the funds just like we did before, formulate a budget, and put in the application and wait for approval. So we're going to be in the process of doing that as well. Also, in addition to that, there are some things that we did in the maintenance budget, which they are now allowing us to use these funds for, that make, if we have to fix things, ventilation or any of those kind of things to make it better for our students and staff, we now can use that funding for operations and maintenance. And I do have some items that didn't make it in the coronavirus relief fund grant that we could put in for and reimburse the operation maintenance. And as you can see on the report, that is an account we are struggling with. You know, we always seem to not have enough money for projects and things we need to do and keep up to date on. I think overall, given that information, salaries are in good shape. I'm not concerned anymore about covering the distant learning teachers or the health aides salary. I'm still working with All-Star Transportation for a credit. There'll probably be a less of a credit now because we are coming back in person and we're using our buses and that's okay. That's great. So there'll be, ongoing negotiations. She is not only negotiating with us, but Derby and a few other surrounding towns too.
Yep.
So as soon as I know how much that amount is that we're going to receive, I will let you know for sure. The special education cost, excess cost grant will be coming out, the first payment in February. And we're watching the overall tuition accounts and transportation accounts. And I do have like some updated information. Hopefully it works out that we had a student move to another town. So it might be a little bit of relief there for us, which is good. I think that is those are the highlights for me, main points really. The ones that I'm concerned about. And now it looks like we got a little bit of relief there. During the month of February, we'll be putting together a projection. There obviously are some areas in the budget that will end up with a savings. And those being bus fuel, electricity, and heating fuel. We'll take a closer look on those accounts to see how they're going to end up. And obviously, any of the other accounts will take a little closer look to see where we're going to be.
Substitutes is one of the ones that come to mind as well. That had a
Yes,
really big overage.
absolutely.
Yeah, great.
Yep, absolutely. We could definitely look to that. And now that some of that funding that we did receive, it also speaks to that. So if we run into a situation, we can certainly use the grant money over operating budget money,
Yep. Okay.
So that's it.
Good news. Ed, do you have any questions?
Yes.
Well, I was worried. I'm not worried. I was wondering about the health aides / can that be transferred for the floating nurse?
They don't specifically say the floating nurse, but I would suggest that, and I can reach out to the program manager of the grant and inquire about that and question her and see if that would be something that they would approve. I'd be willing to do that, and then I could report back to you on that, what they say in that regard.
Great.
Okay, and the second question I had too, is there any indication in there about the food services line item?
And matter of fact, that was one of the first things they put on the list. You cannot use these funds for food services. Just like the CRF coronavirus relief fund, we were told we couldn't use any money for the food services. Now on the flip side, they are trying to do something on the back end of it with food services in the way of maybe some grants that they will be eligible to apply for. But I don't have any clear indication of that yet. I'm sure they'll be launching in that. We're all struggling. All the districts are struggling with the food service. So this is definitely becoming a problem that all of us are facing. And we're going to have to come up with a way to fund it. And hopefully that they can address that for us. But I'll keep you updated on that if I see something come across. I haven't yet, but we'll see.
And it's interesting because on the CABE chair listserv and stuff, there's no discussion among board chairs about that particular item. So obviously CABE, if they're not hearing from us, is not going to advocate for us, which surprises me, especially considering what you said, that we're all suffering in it. To me, that's like 1 and 1 make 2.
Well, I know the CASBO school business officials, they're on top of it. And we're all, like I said, we're all in the same boat. And then I believe CAPS will also do some research and some advocating for that as well, I believe.
Mhm.
You know, it's just a matter of time. Now that this funding has come out and we know exactly what we can spend it on, maybe that will be the other issue that will get addressed and rectified, hopefully.
Okay, anything else, Ed?
No, that's fine.
Great, thank you. I know that we don't have a food services financial statement update in this month. Could you just remind us, Sherry, when is the last time we got a report from food
I
services?
believe you got one in December, I
Okay.
believe.
So in the beginning of January. All right, we'll take a look at that. And my question about the grant money is, could you talk a little more? You said it runs through 2023. Does that school year? Is that calendar? So what is the exact
Well,
term
the
of
ending
grant?
date is in 2023, and usually they do June 30th of 2023.
So that means
sort
that
of-
that's not, okay.
That's sort of like the drop dead date, you know, the last time you can use the money. So it's going across
2+ years.
two fiscal years, I believe.
Yeah, so because we could use the money right now for this year, and so it's for
Yep.
this year and the next 2 years.
Right. Mhm.
So, Mr. Stramal, I don't know how you want to kind of handle this, but this is really going to require some collaborative planning because, like we mentioned the last time we were all together, the Board of Finance is going to really want to understand what the money is being used for and the interaction or lack thereof, because there shouldn't be an interaction with our operating budget and this grant money. So we're going to have to be, they're going to ask the questions, whether, you know, they know they don't have control over the money, but they're going to ask the questions. So I would love to just have some kind of working session to kind of map out some things. And most importantly, for this year, to have really clear documentation on what we're paying for from this year's budget. They're going to ask how much money we have left over for this year. And they're going to ask what we're using for it for next year and how much we're saving for that third year. Does the grant documentation, Sherry, speak specifically to the notion of bringing on, you know, staff funded through the grant to help make up for learning gaps and learning inequities, specifically next year after?
I'd have to read more into that detail to see, and then I
Okay.
certainly can give you that information once I go through it.
Okay.
It just came out late Friday.
Yeah, no
So we're
problem.
just kind of like looking at everything, and I'm
Yeah.
still trying to work on getting that spreadsheet done for the CRF grant, which when I'm done with that, I will share that also with the fiscal
Okay.
committee and the full board. So I'm in the midst of doing that as well.
Okay. All right. And do we have a date for our meeting with the Board of Finance? workshop.
February 8th is our presentation.
All right. So we're not going to have these kind of answers for them by now for that. We're
We'll
just
have a
not.
relatively idea, but we're not going to have details now.
Okay.
But I think a relative idea of what we're doing or planning on doing should be enough at that point. Any other details are going to have to come at a later date.
Yeah. Totally agree. Makes
I
perfect
mean,
sense.
I can't help the fact that the state
Right.
just launched
No,
this
absolutely not.
information Friday afternoon.
Yep.
closer to 4 o'clock actually, because they made a mistake the first time around and then they corrected it the second time, so.
Okay. All right. I'll reach out under separate cover just to see if we can't get some kind of very small, just working meeting, maybe like or Ed, just you and I, maybe to talk about how you want to approach the Board of Finance meeting on Monday.
Sure.
All right. Thanks. I'll email. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. It's good news. It's such a long time frame though. You know, it's almost like you're like
Yeah.
afraid, like you're afraid to, I don't know. It's surprisingly long because like heaven help us if we get back to this situation again. And then in year 2, when we've spent it all in year, I don't know. It's just.
That's what.
Yeah, well, it just gives an opportunity to think about.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you're not struggling now, then maybe you push out
Right.
to the further years, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can make a fiscally sound decision by knowing when the grant money ends.
For sure.
and,
Mhm.
You know, trying to forecast that.
Yeah.
If you want.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't have any other
You're welcome.
questions. Ed, anything else?
No, I was thinking the same as you, Kristen. That's scary that far out.
It's like, do they know something we don't know? I hope not.
Or are they telling us, that's it?
No,
Yeah.
no, typically grants are 2-year grants when they launch them. So I'm not surprised that
Okay.
it's coming out that way.
Okay.
Okay. All right, let me quickly go back to my
So will you
agenda.
recommend the report to the full board then?
Yes, thank you for that
Okay.
reminder because I forgot last time too.
Thank you.
So I would entertain a motion to move to the full board the acceptance of the February 1st, or the management summary ending January 31st, 2020.
Correct.
That's so moved.
Okay, all in favor? I second it. I formally second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Ed and Kristen. No one else is here to oppose, so motion passes.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I don't have a standalone report. Made my comments just to, kind of get ready for next Monday's meeting. We've always done it collaboratively in the past and been available for questions from the Board of Finance. So hopefully do it the same way this year, kind of knowing what their stance will already be, but that's okay. We came forward with the budget that we believe in, that we could stand by, and now it's time for a
Right.
conversation. So that's
Right.
fine. Is there a
Okay.
superintendent's report this evening?
None this evening, no.
Okay, all right. I have not received any public comment for this meeting, so,
I make
Since
a
there's-
motion to adjourn.
and I second that motion. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye, great. Our link is the same, right? We can just stay on this and just turn it off?
I don't know.
Yeah. I think it may be a different one, Miss Harmelin,
Yeah.
only because
Okay.
of the new
I
stream.
think so.
All right,
Yeah.
no problem.
Yeah.
We'll see you in a few minutes then.
All right. See you
Bye-bye.
then. Bye.
Okay. Righty. All right, I see it's 7:32. I count six of us. So I believe that we will begin the regular Board of Ed meeting of February 1st with the Pledge of Allegiance. If we could please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all. All right. Mr. Hatfield?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would ask for your help to allow us to go out of order and to add to the agenda a motion to go into to add to the agenda to go into executive session to discuss the superintendent's contract and invite Attorney Floyd Dugas to join us.
Okay, we're adding to the agenda first, correct?
So I'd like to make that I'd like to make a motion to go out of order and add that to the agenda.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second the motion, Peter Kubik.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Okay, is there any discussion needed? Yes, Ms. Harmling.
I would have agreed with a motion to add to the agenda, but not to do executive session in the middle of the meeting. And since they were both combined in there, I'd need to vote no to that. I don't think we should be doing executive session in the middle of the meeting. It should be at the end.
Okay. Duly noted. Anyone else? Okay. Mrs. Bruno, how do you vote?
I'll vote yes.
Ms. Harmling?
I vote no.
Mr. Hatfield?
Jay Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik?
Peter Kubik, yes.
Mr. Stanek?
Fred Stanek votes yes.
Vote yes.
And Mr. Stramillo votes yes. Motion carries 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. Okay, Mr. Hatfield, do you have a second motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss the superintendent's contract and to include Attorney Floyd Dugas.
Is there a second to that motion?
Peter Kubik, second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kubik. All right, is there any discussion needed on that motion? Okay, Mrs. Bruno, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mr. Champagne, I'm glad to see you've joined us. How do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Harmling,
Ms. Harmeling votes no.
Mr. Hatfield,
Jay Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik,
Peter Kubik, yes.
Mr. Stanek,
Fred Stanek, yes.
and Mr. Stramillo votes yes. Motion carries 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 1. Okay, so now
There is a link that was, sorry, Mr. Chairman, there is a link that was just sent for the executive session.
Okay,
Jay, who sent the link? Just so I'm can, because there's a lot of emails coming in.
It was just sent. It should be the earliest one that was just sent at 7:32.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll click on that and then we'll come back.
All right, so we're cutting out.
Mhm.
All right, it looks like we're all back. Okay. All right, so we returned from the executive session at 8:02 to the regular meeting. And the chair will entertain any motions.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the board authorize the chairman to sign a contract with the superintendent for the current 2020-2021 school year and accept his letter of resignation effective June 30th, 2021.
Is there a second to Mr. Hatfield's motion?
Chris Champagne?
Okay, seconded by Chris. Any discussion needed?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to just offer my sincere thank you to Mr. Wilson for his time in leadership, leading our district in the last 4 years, and wish him well on his future endeavors and look forward to the next couple months working with him
Okay,
through the chair.
thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I would also like, as the board chair, to thank Mr. Wilson for his service to the Seymour community, the Seymour students, Seymour teachers, Seymour administrators. And I know I got the order all different ways, but I appreciate your professionalism during that time. And I wish you your good luck in your future educational career, unless you're changing career, but that's not my business to ask you.
Mr. Chairman, Fred Stanek, if I may comment also.
Yes, you may.
I too would like to thank Mr. Wilson for his service of the past year. I know that this has not been easy. There's been times when I'm sure Mr. Wilson has questioned himself as to whether he was making the right decision. No one has known exactly how to proceed during this terrible crisis of the COVID-19 infection during the past year. I think Mr. Wilson has handled the COVID situation and the structure of the school district during the situation in an exemplary manner, and his team has done a great job. I've been disturbed by some of the comments that have been made by the public about the way the school district has handled the situation. As I said, there's been no right answer or wrong answer. I think we have strived, and Mr. Wilson has led the team to strive toward keeping our children and our staff and our community as safe as possible and healthy as possible during this crisis. Mr. Wilson, I thank you not only for that, but for your service.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Kubik.
I would also like to thank Michael for his 4 years of service and echo most of what Fred's comments. This last year has been a very difficult year. I'm not sure that anyone can make a right or wrong decision, as we see by public comments and on a variety of meetings and the emails that we received. There's a significant amount of people that believe the kids should be in school, and there's another group that feels the kids should not be in school. It's not an easy call. Fortunately, my children are not in school, so it would be tough as a parent, and I'm sure it's got to be very difficult as a superintendent and his entire administration to sit around a table and try to make those decisions in the best interest of the students, teachers, faculty, parents, taxpayers, and everything else. So thank you, Michael. Thanks for everything you've done, and your administration too.
Thank you.
Okay, any other board member wishing to comment at this particular time? Okay. I don't see any hands. Mrs. Bruno, how do you vote?
Kristen Bruno, I vote yes.
Mr. Champagne,
Champagne, I vote yes.
Ms. Harmling,
Kristen Harmeling votes yes.
Mr. Hatfield,
Jay Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik,
Peter Kubik, yes.
Mr. Stanek,
Fred Stanek votes yes with reluctance.
and Mr. Stramello votes yes with thank you. Motion carries unanimously. 8-0. Okay, next item on the agenda is our high school representatives. Zach looks like he's going first, and then Karina second, or I could have that backwards.
Hi.
Hi,
Hello,
Zach.
everyone. First, I just want to start off by saying how glad I am to be back in school. It's definitely been great for all of us. With that being said, the Student Council has set an agenda for the remainder of the year. I am overjoyed to report that we are finally at the cusp of getting a new class rock. Recently, a survey went out to see if Seymour High alumni supported this, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. 88% of over 300 people surveyed supported the graduating class's endeavor to obtain this rock. The new class rock will be displayed at the front of the school, where it could be seen in contrast to the current placement. And Karina.
Karina, we can't hear you, please.
I can go. I can't hear. Yeah, I'll go.
Okay.
Additionally, the Student Council is selling chocolate roses. They're $2 each for Valentine's Day. If any of you are interested, I'll hook you up. The yearbook is starting their superlatives and senior quotes. And in sports, the girls and boys basketball has started. So very exciting. That's all I have for today. Thank you.
Karina, you want to try again?
You guys hear me now?
Yeah, but a little quiet, so you have to speak louder, please.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Well, yeah, he read the rest of the agenda, but yeah, basically that's it.
Okay, are there any questions for either of our student reps from any of the board members? Yes, Ms. Harmling. You have to unmute yourself.
It's a running theme tonight. I'm not sure if this is for a student rep. I don't actually know who organizes prom, but I'm just curious if you have started talking about prom, with hopefully making it as late as possible, where the odds are, I guess, a little better for being able to actually do something.
Yeah, so actually about prom, I reached out to our class advisors today. So I'm just waiting for a response to talk about not just prom, but also senior day, hopefully
Sure.
bringing that and a couple other things for the graduating class.
So more to come.
Yep. I'll report back in March.
Any other questions?
Also, if I could just add.
Go ahead, Zach.
I want to thank the superintendent for his support, also for the students. I know he's been with the senior class, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, we move along now to, thank you, Zach and Karina. Mr. Champagne, you are next under public comment.
Okay, let me just pull these up. Just have to switch screens. There we go. Okay, and I have two. Okey-dokey. All right, the first one I have is from Aaron Perry, 16 Country Club Road. Good evening. I want to start off by saying I'm grateful that my children have been able to return to school in the form of hybrid learning. I do, however, hope that in the next couple of weeks, a plan is being devised to bring these students back full time. In the return plan previously presented, February 1st was the original date for return to full in-person learning. I understand that it was not set in stone, but to push that date back a whole month, as it appears with hybrid scheduled through February, is still discouraging. I plead with you to continue to reevaluate to get these students back in full-time as soon as possible. Thank you for your time, Aaron Perry. And then the second one I have, and I apologize if I destroy the name, Elena Zingri. There were a lot of links to articles in here. I believe everybody got this one, and it's quite long. So I will just read through the first paragraph or so. So Elena Zingri, 140 Mountain Road. The sign said kids should be back in school. The sign said kids are not super spreaders. Science says keeping kids on distance learning is detrimental to their mental health. I've also heard the CDC said there's a little evidence of COVID transmission in schools as long as the right safety strategies are enforced. Attached are the links to articles that confirm these facts by scientists. We cannot keep postponing returning our children to a full-time in-school classroom learning for those that believe it is a safe and the best option for their children, while still offering the remote learning options for those who feel that is best for their child. Majority of towns in Connecticut are doing this. There is a safe way to do this. Seymour should be able to learn from all the towns all around them how to achieve this safely and creatively. These towns have been offering in-school learning for their students for months, some even from the beginning of the school year. Many of these towns and cities also followed the Naugatuck Valley Health Department and also speak with the same director of pediatric medicine at Griffin Hospital. I also find it baffling that New Haven, the biggest school district in the state, found a way to send their K-5 students back 4 days a week. Let's make this happen in our little town of Seymour. Again, Elena Zingri, 140 Mountain Road. That's all I have for now.
Okay. Thank you. All right, the next is the consent agenda. What is the board's pleasure on the consent agenda? You have approval of minutes from 4 different, you have financial management summary, you have nutrition service report, you have staff hirings, and that's it. So what is the board's pleasure? Yes, Mrs. Bruno.
I'd like to make a motion to remove the nutrition services report from the consent agenda.
Okay. Anyone else? Ms. Harmling.
I second that motion.
Okay. You second the motion to
To remove the, that wasn't in the form of a motion, was it?
no,
I apologize.
you don't need to do that, right?
Okay.
Okay, no problem.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to remove something? Okay, so the motion, and correct me if I'm wrong, did we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion, Mr. Chairman, Jay Hatfield, to approve the consent agenda as presented, removing item, C.
No, C, thank you, Jay. Is there a second to the motion now? Ms. Harmling seconds the motion.
Yeah, Kristen Harmling seconds.
Okay. Mrs. Bruno,
Kristen Bruno, I vote yes.
Mr. Champagne,
Chris Champagne, yes.
Ms. Harmling,
Yes,
Mr. Hatfield,
Jay Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik,
Peter Kubic, yes.
Mr. Stanek,
Fred Stanek, yes.
and Mr. Stramello votes yes. Motion carries 8-0. Okay, items removed from the consent agenda. Mrs. Bruno.
I just had a question. I don't know if this goes to Ms. Holmes, but looking at the first page of the nutrition services, it looks like the participation is all for the middle school. Is that because that's where the pickup was? Do we have data on what level, what age students are taking advantage of the food service pickup?
Mrs. Holmes,
sure.
can you respond to that?
I'm sure we have the detail. I would have to reach out to Cindy on that to find out what that is and to report back to the board.
Okay, Mrs. Bruno?
I think that through the chair, I think that would be helpful to know because this is a little,
Okay.
it just doesn't paint the full picture.
I think it's a little screwed because, this is where we deliver the meals, but I don't want, that's just my opinion, but
Mhm.
I will definitely find out
Okay.
more details on that for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to discuss that part? Okay, hearing none, we'll move along to the Finance Committee meeting report of January 11th. Ms. Armling, do we need to add anything to this, or are we just fine with this?
The minutes look fine for the Finance Committee report, and if no one else has any questions, then nothing from me.
Okay, do any board members have questions from the January 11th report now? Okay, I see none. So I will move along to the chairman's comment. Oh, geez. Okay. I'm just glad that we're safe, and this is a heavy snowstorm, and luckily we'll be able to return as soon as we can. But that's basically all I have, and as obviously as a former basketball coach, I'm very happy that both the boys and the girls basketball teams are back practicing. Passion of mine for many years. That's the chairman's comments. Board member comments. Yes, Ms. Harmling. Then
Just a
Ms. Bruno.
Just a very quick comment that I should have mentioned right when we were on the Finance Committee meeting minutes is that we will be presenting our budget to the Board of Finance on Monday. So if anybody has a free day and it doesn't get snowed out, although I guess, are the other town committees, are they proceeding on the inclement weather days like we are? Because it's supposed to do the same thing again next Monday. But in any event, we're presenting to the Board of Finance our budget. So any support is appreciated.
Good point. Thank you, Ms. Harmling. Mrs. Bruno.
I just have 3 comments. First is I'm very excited for the basketball teams, but I believe some of our athletes from other sports are looking for an update and information about whether and how they can proceed with their seasons. I was hoping we would have an update tonight. And on 2 other topics, now that school is back in hybrid, I'm wondering if the board would entertain another discussion around the remote days, because it is a different decision-making process now that buses are running and kids are going to school from when we last discussed it. And then again, based on public comment, revisiting the plan for full in-person learning, or at least an update on how the hybrid is going.
Okay, I would hope, Mrs. Bruno, that the superintendent can update us on some of that. If not, then you can obviously add to the agenda if you so choose. Any other, and we could I could ask Mr. Stacy if he could give us an update, since I see him here, about the other sports. And I'm sure we're talking about indoor track, Mrs. Bruno.
Sure, I'd be happy to speak, Mr. Stramello. Mrs. Bruno, to your point, we had met earlier this week about a plan to get indoor track started. There's 2 things that are working against the typical indoor track practices right now. The first and foremost is our weight room is still not available for use. And we are also not able to utilize the hallways for practices due to ventilation, the ventilation in the hallways. So what we were working on was a plan to, we're developing a plan for cohort type of practicing and conditioning, where they could utilize the gym when that's available. They could also utilize the cafeteria after school because that is an area where there is the proper ventilation. And then obviously prior to tonight, we were hoping to offer as many outdoor opportunities as possible. So there's a lot of things working against the indoor track, but we are in the process of developing a cohort style start to their season.
Okay, and if I could ask Mrs. Stacy, the swimming, and
Yes,
it's the boys swimming now, if I'm correct.
correct. We on the agenda for tonight, we did find a qualified head coach for the boys swim team. He comes with coaching experience from another NVL school and has pretty much a long-standing family history as an NVL swimmer as well. So once his appointment is final, we'll be able to develop a timeline with him to get those practices started as well.
Very good. Any other questions? Yes, Mrs. Bruno.
Are all other coaching positions filled for the winter?
The only one that we need to post now is an assistant swim coach. Our assistant, he submitted his resignation from that position. So now that we have a head coach in place, we will be posting the assistant position.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, Ms. Harmling.
How come the weight room has not been able to be utilized?
Mr. Stacy, would you respond to that, please?
We have weekly administrator meetings. Mrs. Federowitz and I meet with central office administration regularly, and based upon our last meeting, we were waiting on guidance from the Naugatuck Valley Health Department to open the weight room.
So it's
There are other schools in the area underneath that same health district that still do not have access to their weight rooms either.
so try to follow up, Mr. Stramello.
Sure.
Is it an issue of ventilation, or I guess I'm not totally clear. I mean, I know we have the custodial staff to keep clean and.
Go ahead,
Mr. Wilson,
Mr. Stacy.
if I could actually, since you have the conversations with Jessica and the health department, I would just need a little more information on that. I'm sorry.
Certainly, it's just, it is an overall issue of just cleanliness and timeframes of cohorts, and having the student athletes be responsible to obviously continually clean the equipment after use, as well as when one cohort would leave, providing our custodial staff the time to go in and sanitize. So a couple of things that need to be ironed out, as Mr. DeStacey said. Other teams in the NVL that work closely with NVHD are experiencing the same thing. The weight room has been a question for a lot of schools, but considering the close proximity and obviously the exertion of all the bodily fluids when you are working out and exerting all of that, there's more of an impact in the weight room to make sure that we mitigate the germs as best way possible. So we are working with NVHD, and we're hopeful to have some guidance. And as Mr. DeStacey said, we continually meet weekly, and as soon as we can feel that we can do that safely and we have cohorts in place that we can do that, we will do that.
Okay, Ms. Harmling?
Yes.
Okay, any other board member comments? Okay, Mr. Wilson, you are up.
Good evening. So thank you to the board members and to Zach for your lovely sentiments this evening. They mean a great deal to me. So Zach, I guess in some ways I'll be graduating with the class of 2021. So looking forward to that since I came in with your class. In terms of our hybrid return to learning, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our administrators and our teachers for really making it work, coming together, welcoming our students back. Obviously, this week was going to be our first 3-2 split, but apparently Mother Nature had other plans than our 3-2 split. Mother Nature apparently did not like the letter on the 3-2 split. So we're still fighting the snow and obviously the storms, but working and looking forward to our 3-2 return to hybrid learning. But in the spirit of the hybrid return to learning, Mrs. Tenza and I got to visit several classes to see the hard work that our teachers and students are doing. And it was tremendous. It was, just as if they hadn't skipped a beat, so to speak, whether in person or remote, regardless of the platform. As I've said numerous times, our teachers are teaching and our students are learning. So it was a really great to see that and to go in and to see our students once again, albeit virtually. I was able to obviously swing by all of the buildings and give a wave to students, also trying to be respectful of the time that I spent in the buildings, considering all 4 different buildings and I'm in all 4, but it was nice to see the students and staff in person as well. So continuing along that model, I'd also be remiss if I didn't thank Tony DePrimo and the Department of Public Works. Constant communication since Sunday with the impending storm. I know his crews have been really trying to open the roads as best as they can. And they're continually working even as this meeting is going on. Unfortunately, not going to be ready for tomorrow, but the snow is not going to be done by tomorrow either. And the same with Tim Connors and his team. They're ready to clear everything off and to welcome our students back on Wednesday. So looking forward to our return on Wednesday. Hopefully Mother Nature hears that at least and allows us to return on Wednesday. So as I said, overall, it's been a really good return to learning. It's been a smooth transition. A couple of hiccups with the multiple different bus runs running, but all students have, followed along just like we assumed they would, and our teachers and our administrators have made sure that our students got on the correct buses both to and from school and were able to arrive safely to school and safely home. So really happy with our hybrid return to learning, really excited for our 3-2 split in the hybrid return. And I too am excited about the return of our winter sports seasons. The one thing I'd encourage all the board members to do is that Mr. DeStacy and Mrs. Federowicz will be sending out video links, and you could watch the games via video if you so choose, so that you could support our student athletes that way. I know that's a wonderful way to watch our student athletes, and sometimes it's actually you get a better picture sometimes depending on where you're seated. We all don't get the Mr. Stramello seats sometimes, so if you're on the video, you get the nice seat, and it's definitely worth it. And I would encourage you all to watch and support our student athletes that way. That's all I have for this evening, Mr. Stramello.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Wilson? Yes, Mr. Champagne, do I see your hand up?
Well, I have 2. My first one is, how are we doing with quarantine numbers and whatnot in the schools? And I guess this kind of leads into my second question too about staffing and whatnot, because I heard that there was a specific incident where there was a teacher who was out, and due to that, one of the cohorts didn't have, or one of the classes in one of the cohorts didn't have any instruction for that day.
I could tell you that our tracker is up to date and live, and our numbers are going up with our numbers of students who have tested positive, and then our quarantine numbers are going up as well. They have not gone up to the point where we feel that we need to close a building yet by any means. If we've had to put students and staff in quarantine, we've done that. We followed all the protocols. Our nurses have been phenomenal, working with NVHD very closely when they do the contact tracing and follow those protocols. In terms of your question, Mr. Champagne, it's a little tough to get in because it seemed very specific. I could say in general terms, our administrators have been working very hard to ensure that classes have coverage, to the point where we've had several administrators actually doing the sub coverage themselves in the event we couldn't get a substitute to come in. So we are battling that a bit, but that's nothing, that we're not used to, I would say. But I would say that our administrators are working very hard. We've heard at our admin meeting last week that we had 2 administrators cover several classes just to ensure that that wouldn't happen. So without being specific about the question that you have, I would definitely welcome the question either in an email to myself and to that particular building's administrator, or you can feel free to reach out to me and I could reach out to the building administrator and get you specifics on your question. But our numbers are going up on the tracker, but we are able to still maintain our hybrid learning and to keep our students in school.
Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Bruno?
I guess I would like some clarification on what you mean by numbers are going up.
I think if you look at our tracker, Mrs. Bruno, our tracker, which is updated daily, shows that our numbers are on the increase for positive cases, and you've seen the letters that go out. And not only positive cases, but the numbers of quarantines after that. So the numbers on the tracker are going up in terms of that. But as I said, that's not an alarm for us right now to close any particular building or school or anything of that nature.
Okay, Ms. Harmling?
I think it's important to note something that Mrs. Bennett had pointed out in one of our previous meetings, so that people don't think that there has been any kind of a surge in our number of positive cases, because the feeling was that families were not necessarily reporting the positive cases when we were on full distance learning, and particularly over the holidays when we were flat out on vacation. So there was a little bit of confusion in some of the parent groups that I'm a member of, because it felt like all of a sudden, why are we seeing so many emails? But it could have been more because we weren't getting the emails when we were out on break. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Anyone else? Yes, Mrs. Bruno?
I think I'm still confused because I'm looking at the tracker. And it looks like there might be an addition error for student cases that has a total of 2. But when you look across the schools, it adds up to 4, but 0 staff cases. So are you talking about the total numbers are going up because there are positive cases, or do you mean the number of cases per day is increasing as a steady trend?
Yeah,
I'm
I was
just not.
I was speaking in terms of the number being the total numbers. As I said, we're monitoring our exact total numbers for staff and students. And as it shows on the tracker, when you look at our total numbers of students and staff, when you go across, sometimes, you're seeing the numbers of students and staff in quarantine. That's what I was referring to, and as Ms. Harmeling said, that when we get notified, definitely is when the letters, obviously we report it immediately, but, I pointed out just because that is, the tracker is the most up-to-date item that we have. And, for us to continue to, monitor and continue to do what we do and continue to, obviously, we want to stay in hybrid learning. We want our students to continue to come in. And what I'm saying is we're monitoring that so that we're able to do that. So we haven't had to see we haven't seen the mass breakout of, to use a general term, but we're concerned when we have students, that would impact other students and or, our numbers of students in quarantine. And, obviously when they're in quarantine, they could join remotely, which is wonderful, but that does prevent them from obviously the in-person approach. So I wanted you to be aware of that, but the tracker is the most up-to-date tool that we have.
I agree. I just want to be clear that because if you're doing the total positive cases from August, those will never go down. So we can't be talking about that line as increasing because that's a cumulative. So you're talking about the students and staff in quarantine and the positive cases for today.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the superintendent? Yes, Ms. Harmling?
I feel like it could either be a question or we could be at a point where we'd like to add to the agenda, because I don't know that we heard what the plan is moving forward. So the plan that was presented to us prior to the holidays had us going back to school this week, full-time, all students in K through 5. So that was delayed a week. The whole plan was delayed a week. So I don't know what the thinking is. Is there a possibility that we're going back to school K through 5, 4 or 5 days a week starting next week? I think some parents want to just kind of know what the status of that original plan that was published or shared with the public prior to the holidays, because my understanding was we were pushing it back 1 week.
Okay, Mr. Wilson or Mrs. Tenza?
Certainly, I could start, and Mrs. Tenza, feel free to join. Mr. Stramello, as you also stated last week I think it was last week at the meeting where we talked about the potential for reopening, our partners at the Naugatuck Valley Health District while they cautiously supported even our return to hybrid learning, they did not think and feel that now was the appropriate time to bring anyone back in a more fuller capacity. So with that being said, we made the move to go to hybrid, and we also increased our hybrid 3-2. And I believe it was stated at that board meeting too, that people were in agreement stating, yeah, we were talking about hybrid all along. I understand the question and the comment of, at the original plan moving for February 1st, but that has been pushed back. We've been in our hybrid now for really only 1 week, 4 days technically. And we really need to see and continue to monitor and to see how we are doing in terms of school and keeping our schools open and keeping our students in school and keeping our hybrid plan going. And we feel that with more time, we'll be able to do that. At this time, to say that we would open in a fuller capacity next week, I am not at that point where I could comfortably state that. I would say that we will continue to monitor it, and obviously we will communicate that when that plan arises, when we feel that it is safe to bring back students in a fuller capacity. Remembering, as this board, several people have asked, once we bring back students in a fuller capacity, our ability to socially distance becomes very, very difficult. In some places, in some rooms, there won't be social distancing. So that is a huge cause for concern for us. So right now, we're very happy with the hybrid approach. We're very happy with the 3-2 split, because also on that original plan, the 3-2 was just going to be for our 6-12 students. And we've made it as a district move right now to get our students back into school 3 days and then 2, and then obviously the reverse on the following weeks. So we will continue to monitor that, continue to look at the data, and then continue to communicate the plans moving forward for a fuller return to learning.
Mrs. Tenzer, would you like to add to that?
No, thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Bruno?
2 questions. First, when you say we won't be able to social distance at all in some rooms, do you mean we won't be able to social distance at 6 feet? Do you mean we won't be able to social distance at 3 feet? Because both of those metrics have been set forth by the state.
Correct. 6 feet would not be possible with full return to learning. And 3 feet in some rooms, we would be really pushing it. I mean, I know at our high school that would be non-existent. Mr. Freund has expressed that as well, that the size of the classroom would not allow for that. And some of our elementary schools, our administrators have measured it out, and it would be very, very difficult. So we, as I said, right now, we have the ability to maintain our 3-2 and to maintain that social distancing in order to keep our students and staff safe.
Kristen, Bruno, you want to follow up or not?
I just wanted to ask a follow-up regarding the metrics we were using, because there was a lot of discussion around the town numbers and whether or not we should be using those, but they were reviewed at the last meeting. So I think the current town numbers should be discussed right now as well, just as a check-in.
Our current town number, I'd have to pull the exact number up. I believe it's a 69 we went down to, I believe, which is obviously better than the 86 that we were at. So yes, we are seeing that trend go down. And we also alluded to that by saying that we had 2 good weeks, and our 2 indicator numbers were pointing in that direction. So statistically and mathematically, we almost predicted that number going down. So we're happy to see that it did. But as we said at that meeting, we're looking at all 3 factors.
Okay, Ms. Harmling, I saw your hand.
Just a quick follow-up on the social distancing. When it was said that if the high school went back, there's no way we could social distance again. Are we talking about a 6-foot or a 3-foot social distancing, and what is possible in a high school classroom?
Mr. Stramello, I'd like Mr. Freund to answer that, because he's done a lot of work with tape measures and has sent some data to me. So if Mr. Freund wouldn't mind, I hate to put you on the spot, Mr. Freund.
Good evening, Board of Ed, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. If we were to come back in full, it would be, in my initial estimates, there are 88 classrooms or classes that would be impossible for me to maintain 3 feet of separation based on the standard size of the high school classroom. So we'd have to go less than 3 feet, have to go to 2 feet, which would be just our normal packing in the classrooms. Right now, the majority of our classrooms, all but a few, could hold 20 students or 20 people. That includes support people and teachers at any given time. And our numbers are well above that.
So 20 is the maximum in a classroom to maintain 3 feet of social distancing? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, any other questions?
It's just a clarification, if I could, Mr. Stramello, if no one else has anything.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, is it fair to say that from the parent perspective, we do not have a timeline for full-time return to school, that we don't have a timeline that we're working towards? We're just watching numbers. And I'm not trying to minimize the importance of watching number. I'm just trying to get clarity around, because there are parents out there who have been feeling and assuming that the whole plan was just simply pushed back a week, but that does not appear to be the case.
I appreciate you saying that, Ms. Harmeling. I liked your secondary piece to that, where we're continually monitoring the data and the 3 data points to make that judgment when it would be safe to increase our participation, student participation in full. And obviously that will continue to be communicated. Obviously and also will be communicated will be the challenges with how much social distancing will be there when we do make that decision. Because I think parents also need to be informed of that, because that could also alter their decision to come back in a fuller capacity, and they may choose temporary full distance learning. So we will continue to communicate that. But as I said, we're excited to be back now. We're excited our 3-2. We'd like to see how that continues. And obviously we'd like to continue our plan as we have it in terms of mitigation strategies to help our students stay in school as long as we can. So right now, I would say that we are doing that. We're going to continually monitor, and we will communicate that moving forward.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, yes, Mrs. Bruno.
So is there a plan to survey families about, were the district to go full in person, whether they would opt into full in person or choose remote learning, full remote?
Well, we definitely have the original survey. We could definitely send that question out as a quick survey question. We could definitely do that as we move forward, monitoring the numbers and to see how parents would feel. But as I said, right now with the monitoring, I mean, not that hurts to do that, but I don't think we're at that place right now to say we're welcoming students back in a fuller capacity just yet. So when we make that decision as a team, we will then send that out. That's a good suggestion. I have no problem sending that question out.
Okay. Yes, Mrs. Bruno.
Just wondering if the superintendent or the board would like to have further discussion about the ability to call a remote day versus a snow day, now that the circumstances have changed with the hybrid learning.
Well, I don't know, Mrs. Bruno. We had that huge discussion the last time. Are you suggesting that we add to the agenda to have that discussion again?
When we had that discussion, Mr. Stramello, the whole district was on remote. So it was really a decision of either calling a snow day or not calling a snow day.
Okay, well, I'll reiterate my question. Would you like to add to the agenda to discuss that issue?
I'll make a motion to add it to the agenda.
Okay, is there a second to add to the agenda the discussion of a snow day, remote days?
Kristen Harmeling will second that.
Okay. Everybody understand we're adding to the agenda the discussion of that? Okay. Mrs. Bruno, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mr. Champagne?
Chris Champagne, yes.
Okay, Ms. Harmling?
I vote yes.
Mr. Hatfield?
Jay Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik?
Yes.
Mr. Stanek?
Red Stanek, yes.
And Mr. Stramello votes yes. Motion to add to the agenda the discussion of remote days, snow days, 8-0. Who would like to begin the discussion?
I, if no one else wants to, I can begin the discussion. I think we're sitting at a point, what have we had? With tomorrow, we've had 3 snow days. And my feeling with opposing it the last time was, one, the district was in full remote learning. So there wasn't a decision to be made about whether the buses can safely run. It was a different decision for the superintendent. Now that we are in hybrid and there are kids taking buses to school, yet we still have the sort of infrastructure in place for the remote. I think it may be worthwhile to have a conversation about being able to call a remote day. My other reason that I was opposed to it the last time we discussed it was that there was a formula imposed about, you know, after so many, it becomes a remote day. And I really think it needs to be a unique decision each day based on the forecast and all of those factors that you consider as a superintendent, being able to really think about, to talk to your public works people and talk to your maintenance folks and your weather experts. I think it's a different factor each time. And I would want the board to consider that.
Chris Champagne.
Thanks. So to Kristen's point, I think last time we were a little bit quick. So we were all home, right? And I think that one snow day we had was kind of silly. I think we were all home. We could have been remote. The only part about hybrid snow days that bothers me is, and I could kind of go either way with this, but if I'm somebody who's relying on a grandparent or another family member to watch my children on snow days, I just worry that that secondary support may not be equipped to handle kids who now need to learn. You know, grandma, grandpa, or aunt or uncle, they have no idea what the kids are doing. And now they have to take on that responsibility of, you know, getting the kids set up and getting them online and watching them and making sure. So I'm kind of torn on this. That's the piece that bothers me is, you know, if there's a snow day, you got to go to grandma's house and grandma's clueless with the internet. You know, those are that's really the one piece to this that bothers me. But I agree that that first snow day and having a formula based around things when we already have the April break stuff to take off. You know, I think that was kind of silly. We did that back last month or November, whatever it was.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
thanks so much. So we currently have or are utilizing the model, good and bad. I think it's good and bad. Before I thought it was good. I think it's both. My only suggestion would be, I think I would support now if it was a half day though. I think the idea of it being a full day is difficult both for the people. You know, I know it's hard for me if there's a big storm like this. I was out there 5 times today and had to, you know, do it in between classes. So I know from my own personal perspective, that was a struggle. But the other thing is, you know, for some of these kids that maybe have to help their families, if they have to then do that all day, it's kind of a challenge. So I would support if we could do half days.
All right, Ms. Harmling.
I felt very much like Mrs. Bruno felt the last time we did it. You know, it was a different dynamic. My concern now is that, you know, look what's happening this week, right? So we're going to be out of school Monday and Tuesday. So that means cohort A isn't going to get, they're going to lose 2 days of in-person instruction. So now that we're back in hybrid mode, I also think it's different. I definitely stand by the decision that we made. I don't think it was silly, Mr. Champagne, that we head off on the first snow day because we were being responsive, at least I was, to parent concerns about wanting their children to have that freedom of the snow day, that unexpected, wow, we don't have to go to school today. And same for teachers, that unexpected, wow, I don't have to teach today. But I also didn't want to be stuck to a formula like Mrs. Bruno mentioned. So I'm absolutely open at this point in time, now that we're back in hybrid mode, for the superintendent to make a call on a day like today. I don't think we should have had remote learning. I'm glad we didn't, particularly for the reason, Mr. Hatfield, you just said. My kids were outside in and out all day long. And I'm grateful for that. So I am comfortable, having it be where when things look a little dicey on the road, let's play it safe. Let's learn from home, but not for a snowstorm like this. So I'm comfortable leaving it to the superintendent's discretion. And I'm also fine. I think that makes sense, Mr. Hatfield, to have it be a shortened day. So whatever the board's pleasure is, I'm amenable.
Mr. Stanek.
If I may, to Ms. Harmeling, I don't understand why you're saying leave it to the superintendent's discretion that we go remote or not remote on a snow day. Either we do or we don't. I just don't understand what you're saying.
Well, because I just articulated why, Mr. Stanek, because on a day like today, people need to shovel themselves out of their house. And the way to keep up with a snowstorm like this is to be going in and out and constantly trying to clear your walkway off. And that's a hard thing to juggle if you're trying to do remote learning. On a day where it's a little bit of a milder weather, where perhaps it's more a matter of the roads just couldn't get cleared in time for us to go to school, then go ahead and make it a learning day, particularly if it's an early dismissal day.
Well, I think, Fred Stanek again, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
I think Mr. Hatfield's idea of a short day, half day makes sense to address those concerns. But I would like to state that distance learning, what was previously known as e-learning, was being developed in other parts of the country that experience, for example, South Carolina, experience a week or two off in the fall when there are threats of hurricanes, so that students would be able to continue their education. So I think that the original intent, one of the original intents of developing remote learning was to take into account inclement weather days or threat of inclement weather. And so we've got that opportunity now. We've got the platform. We've developed it, unfortunately, because of COVID, but we do have that opportunity. Even the Woodland School District in the fall of 2019 was experimenting and starting to do workshops with their staff about remote learning for these reasons. So I think it's a serious consideration that we should think about remote learning on these snow days.
Okay, we've had a good discussion on it. Is there any motion that needs to be made, or do we move on? Yes, Mrs. Bruno.
I guess through the chair, I'd like to know if the superintendent would like us to make a motion. If actually, Mr. Wilson was not at the meeting when we had this conversation, so I would like to hear his thoughts.
Mr. Wilson.
Certainly, thank you. At the meeting where the motion was set forth, in my absence, it was presented, a lot of districts were doing that traditional 2 or maybe 3 snow days and then the rest remote learning days to try to be cognizant of the end of the year. And to several points that were made, obviously, where if it is a traditional snowstorm where students have to shovel and or can get out and enjoy some playtime, that's why we have the traditional snow day in place, as opposed to if it's going to be icy and treacherous, rather than maybe call a delay or call a cancellation, you could do a remote learning day. So as you said, Mrs. Bruno, there are a lot of factors that us superintendents take into consideration at 3 a.m. So it's been a long day for me, but we look at all of those different things and we look at them. So the original intent was to still allow for traditional, if you will, in quotation, snow days, but also to try to be respectful of the end of the year come June, where the buildings get a little hot, where some of our buildings that are not properly air conditioned, and our students are excited to start their summer, and hopefully this summer is an exciting one for our students and families as well. Who knows, but I'm hopeful, and I think a lot of people are, that it will be. So that's why the sentiment was there to do 2 days, and now that we've had 3, it just pushes the year back. So understanding that was the board's pleasure, understanding, hearing all of you this evening, there was a lot of obviously things that went into your decision-making process that evening. And I have since listened to the meeting and reviewed the minutes myself. But I think that if we're going to be cognizant of that moving forward, I think that we can do traditional days if, you know, in other words, it's going to be some sort of snowstorm where the students maybe have to shovel and/or can go out and play. But when we're looking at the side of safety and we have to make that difficult decision to say, just not safe to keep the buses on the road, but it's safe to learn, that we could switch to a remote learning platform. So I do like that ability. So it's a catch-22. So either we kind of move to give me the ability to do that, meaning the superintendent and or the associate superintendent, and or we just continue where every day that would have to be called for inclement weather would be just tacked on at the end. So I do like the ability to make that decision, obviously for safety reasons and for learning continuum reasons, as opposed to, you know, for example, even with our added professional development days, you know, last week when we had to call, you know, that it would have been normally a delay on that Wednesday because those roads were so bad. And then a delay with an early release would have been terrible for our students. There's literally no learning. You're coming to school to get back on the bus. I mean, it's not good and it's not quality. So having our students learn from home that day got them a full half day of learning in. So, you know, I appreciate that. And I think having that kind of autonomy and support from the board would go a long way in making those decisions. And I think our teachers would be happy with that too, because, you know, then they could obviously plan if they knew as well, as soon as they knew, you know, when they get the call from the evening before. So I don't know if that answers your question in terms of should you make a motion or not, but I think having that ability and that support so that we can do that if we needed to would be much appreciated. But whatever the board's pleasure, if we wish to just continue with inclement, so be it. If we wish to, you know, give me the ability to, you know, continually review the process and make decisions based on that, I would appreciate and support that as well.
Mr. Champagne?
I agree. I like that too. How would the communication happen? Just the same as usual? If we have a massive one like today, it's everybody home, we're not doing anything, versus, you know, the news outlets and whatnot, it would say remote day and
Yeah,
the
so
communication.
if you've seen on like WFSB and WTNH, just to name a few, they've added the neat feature where it says closed dash remote learning day. So that's what it would read, Mr. Champagne, and our staff would get that as well.
Okay. So what is the board's pleasure? Because I would like to move on. Mrs. Bruno?
I would just like to add that one of the, because we haven't talked about it, and just to get on the record, one of the factors is power and internet. So if students or teachers have lost, and that's what I'm trying to navigate for, we have a remote learning day in my district tomorrow. So we just hadn't discussed that. You know, it's not just about shoveling, it's also about access to the technology you would need.
You're 100% right, Mrs. Bruno. I am constantly, obviously, speaking with DPH, who keeps me well apprised. Tom Amy, the emergency management director. If there's a block or a grid that goes out in Seymour, I know about it probably more than anyone else because I know what area is impacted and affected. And we, you know, even if we had an issue, you know, harmless enough, but only 5 students happened to be impacted by it. And it was just a quick flip on the grid. And we accommodated for those students of the periods that they missed. They weren't missing of their own volition. It was obviously from a power incident. But obviously, because of the fear this evening into tomorrow, where we could all be walloped with some power outages, and I'm hoping not. I'm definitely hoping not. But yes, those considerations would obviously be made. And even if we were planning on remote, for example, let's just say tomorrow was a plan for remote and then it happened where it was a power outage, it would be switched to a traditional and moved to the end. Obviously, tomorrow being out of the question, as we all know, because the decision's been made. But moving forward, if that were the case, we could say remote pending. And then in the morning, we make that decision after I speak to all of those individuals and bother them at 5 in the morning. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Harmling.
I'd like to make a motion to give the superintendent discretion to call a remote learning day in the event of inclement weather or a traditional snow day or inclement weather day.
Is there a second to the motion by Ms. Harmling?
Fred Stanek, I'll second the motion.
Okay. All right, I believe we've had enough discussion unless there's other people that would like to discuss it more, but the chair will
Just a quick-
ask that we vote on the motion unless there's objection to the chair's ruling on that. Okay,
Just a quick
hearing
question.
none. Okay,
Oh.
Mr. Hatfield.
Sorry. No, just a quick question. Would you, Mr. Wilson, then at some, or excuse me, some of those days, may they be shortened days, or would just be always full days if they were remote learning days?
Mr. Hatfield, I would be remiss if I would lessen the day only because the board graciously gave more professional development days, which our teachers are beyond happy with, and our administrators as well. They're getting a lot done on those PD days, but to lessen the learning time because of a remote day, I think we have some remote schedules in place that do that already for our learners, but I would be remiss to make it a half day. If that were the board's pleasure, we could do that, but I think I would not want to lose more learning time for that if we were, in the event we were keeping students home to be safe and their parents or whomever planned that it would be a traditional full day of learning. I would like to keep that as close to true as possible in terms of making it a full day of learning for the students.
Okay,
And
Jay?
sorry, one other clarifying question. Obviously, if it's a remote learning day, it would be remote for staff as well. They would stay at home.
Mr. Wilson?
Absolutely, Mr. Hatfield, just like we did last week, the decision was made to have the teachers teach from home because it was going to be treacherous conditions and there was no way we were going to make a delay, especially for the teachers, so to speak, and then have a half day for our students. So yes, those are those tough decisions, and safety of all students and staff, that comes right into play. We would definitely be flexible with that and have our teachers be able to take advantage of that.
Okay, any other questions? The chair is going to move the question to vote. Mrs. Bruno?
Kristen Bruno, I vote yes.
Mr. Champagne?
Chris Champagne, yes.
Ms. Harmling?
Ms. Harmeling, yes.
Mr. Hatfield?
Mr. Hatfield, yes.
Mr. Kubik?
Yes.
Mr. Stanek?
Fred Stanek, yes.
Mr. Stromello votes yes. Motion carries unanimously 8-0. Thank you. Okay, moving
Stromello?
along, our next,
Mr. Tramello?
yes,
Thank you. And I'd like to make a motion to add to the agenda discussion and possible motion of forming a search committee for the superintendent position.
I'll
okay.
second Chris Champagne.
Chris Champagne seconds it. Okay, everybody is clear of what we're going to be discussing next. Okay, to add the agenda, Mrs. Bruno,
Kristen Bruno, I vote yes.
Chris Champagne,
Chris Champagne, yes.
Kristen Harmling,
Kristen Harmeling, yes.
Jay Hatfield,
Jay Hatfield, yes.
Mr.
Peter
Kubik,
Kubik, yes.
Mr. Stanek.
Fred Stanek, yes.
Okay. Ms. Harmling, would you like to make that motion again, please?
I would, thank you. I'd like to make a motion that the Seymour Board of Education appoint itself as a search committee for purposes of filling the position of superintendent of schools, beginning with the 2021-2022 school year.
Is there a second? Who seconds it?
Chris Champagne.
Okay, please, you need to identify yourself, Chris. Thank you. Okay, everyone clear on the motion? Any discussion needed? Okay, Mrs. Bruno,
Kristen Bruno, I vote yes.
Mr. Champagne,
Chris Champagne, yes.
Ms. Harmling,
Ms. Harmeling, yes.
Mr. Hatfield,
Jay Hatfield, yes.
Peter
Mr.
Kubik, yes.
Mr. Stanek,
Fred Stanek, Mr. Chairman, on the discussion, you beat me to the vote before I could discuss. I do not wish to be a member of the search committee, but I'll vote yes on the motion.
okay, duly noted, Mr. Stanek. And Mr. Stromello votes yes. Motion carries 8, no, excuse me, I keep saying 8-7-0. Okay, now moving along, we have the information next. We have activities and recognitions from the middle school 1, Bungay Elementary 2, Chatfield Presti Elementary School 3. Any questions from board members? Okay, then we have special education monthly enrollment update from Dr. Boyle. Dr. Boyle, would you like to speak to that, or does your report satisfy board members? Or should I say that board members have any questions for Dr. Boyle?
A lot of stability from last month to this month, so I'll be happy to take any questions.
Okay, are there any questions for Dr. Boyle? Okay, moving along then, we have staff resignations. Anita Cardona and Jennifer Sardo. And we also have Catherine Giratano and Romita Hernandez. And then we have Appendix E. I'm sorry, those were non-certified. Appendix E, Jenny Ames, Nicholas Blade, and Michelle Estevez Pino also. All righty. Public comment is next. Mr. Champagne, any new public comment?
Oh, sorry, I'm muted. No, I don't see any.
Okay. Then that brings us to an opportunity to adjourn. Who would like to make that motion?
So moved.
Mr. Champagne, second.
Peter Kubik, second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, please raise your hand, sir, just so I can see everybody. And then I can announce that it was 8-0 to adjourn. I mean, 7-0 to adjourn. I still hung up on the 8. Well, thank you, everybody. And
Good night.
good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.